Long before the neighborhoods, schools, and businesses we know today, Oswego began as a small settlement along the Fox River. Drawn by a natural river crossing and the promise of opportunity, early pioneers arrived in the 1830s and built a community rooted in hard work, faith, family, and determination. The river became the lifeblood of the settlement, connecting travelers, merchants, and farmers to a growing future.
Raised out actually on a farm in Wheatland Township, just across the border in Will County. And we lived there till I was 8 years old. My dad had contracted the same kind of arthritis that I have, and so had to retire from farming. Fortunately, my grandparents owned a house here in Oswego that my parents could buy from them. My grandparents were William and Mabel Holsteeder.
Okay.
And the house had originally been built by Mabel's parents, John Peter and Amelia Lance, and they built it as their retirement home in 1908 when they moved in off the farm, also out in Wheatland Township.
So the old Harvey house was out on Wolf.
Yes, almost at the corner of Wolf
Yeah.
and 30.
So did your dad grow up here?
Yeah, Dad lived his entire life on Wolf Road. In fact, yeah, he was born in that house. My great-grandfather kept a diary from the time he came over from Scotland until the day he died, every day.
Unbelievable.
And it's only like 3 sentences, but he talked about the first time they got a telephone and when the road was paved in front of the house. And he went into Oswego to vote. And I searched through it trying to find something about the Civil War. Found one mention, and it said, went to a war meeting in Oswego. That was it. But the Chicago fire he mentions because he said he could see the flames and the smoke from the farm.
Wow. Did that move somewhere?
They did. When my dad sold the farm, he sold it to John Green, and my dad, like all the Harveys, likes to talk, and he, of course, had to tell the story about how that farmhouse was actually a wedding present to my grandmother from my grandfather. He was a little older than she was, and I always thought he had to sweeten the pot a little bit. So he built her this house, and my dad was born there. And when my dad told the whole story to John, John said, "I can't knock that house down now." So he literally picked it up, and they moved it down Wolf Road, and then down Route 30 and up Rance Road, and now it's at the polo field, Aaron Moore Polo Field. That's where I grew up. The house that is currently across from it at Aaron Moore on the other side of the road was actually the second Harvey house, and it's still there. They've added on and changed it and remodeled a lot, but that belonged to my great-grandfather and his first wife, and they had 4 kids, and that was in the mid-1850s. He got married a second time, and that was my great-grandmother, and they had 4 boys. And then my grandfather was one of those 4 boys, and he moved around then onto Wolf Road, which was the house I grew up in. So on Harvey Road, Wolf Road, Rance Road, it was all Harvey territory and through there.
My name is Jean. My maiden name is Hoke. I'm now Jean Hester, but my grandmother was a Schultz, and her family moved to Oswego, I believe, right before 1900. I think her mom, they were in Chicago in 1888 or somewhere around there, and then they moved to Oswego before my grandmother was born, and she was born in 1900. And my mom and dad, they were very active in the community. In football, I think he was in the Glee Club. He also played for the Clippers. He was in Korea. He was also one of the volunteer firemen, and when he felt he was done with that part of it, he was a commissioner. He did that. Mom met Dad in high school, but she also did most of she was an artist,
Very talented
Very
artist.
talented artist. She did most of the artwork for the school projects. Like she would do scenery for the, or things for the yearbook or
Yeah.
newsletters and stuff like that. So she did a lot of that too.
When anybody ever goes to Oswego Bank or Byline Bank, her paintings are all over the walls, and they're fabulous.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Well, I can go way back to the 1850s,
Go.
where my mother's side of the family was Bud's, and hence Bud Road, Bud Farms.
Yeah.
The house at Winding Creek was built by my great-great-grandfather, Jacob Budd. My grandfather took over from his dad, who was Jacob Budd, then Earl Budd was my grandfather. He got married. Grandma didn't want to live on the farm, so he ended up at Healy Chapel because they needed somebody that could drive a hearse of horses or motorized. He was 63 years later, he retired as president. My mom and dad are originally from Aurora. I lived at the farm during the winters of 78 and 79. I had to snowmobile in and out to where I lived to get to the hard road so I could drive my vehicle to Aurora where I worked. Found my house on Main Street in June 1 of 1979, so a mere 47 years ago.
Ford Lippold, back in 1983, as one of his contributions to Oswego's sesquicentennial, had taken his portable typewriter down to the Oswego Library and sat there with the microfilm of the Kendall County Record. The record's microfilm goes all the way back to 1864.
Oh my gosh.
And Ford went through there, and starting in, I think, 1867, there was an Oswego news column in the Record every week. It was written by the local postmaster. And so Ford picked interesting tidbits from there and came up with about 30 pages of interesting happenings from Oswego. And down at the Ledger Sentinel, after the Ledger and the Sentinel combined, we used those as the basis for our yesteryear column. Well, when I retired in 2008, I decided, wouldn't it be cool if we had that asset down at the museum of those transcriptions, but not just here and there or what Ford thought was interesting, but all the way from as far back as I could get them to, say, 1970. So I sat down in the basement at the Little White School with the microfilm reader, and for the next, I think it was about 3 years it took me. And that 30 pages eventually morphed into, I think I've got now about somewhere around 5,000 on Oswego history, and then other parts of maybe Kendall County history that impacted Oswego in one way or another. And so all that stuff combined has just filled my brain with a whole lot of Oswego stuff. And besides that, it's fun writing about it and telling people about it and letting them know that Five Corners is crazy, but there's a reason that it's there. It's a reason because that's where the stagecoach roads all came together. We're still dealing with the stagecoach era here in the 21st century, whether we want to or not. It's the whole thing about people may not care about history, but history cares about them. And you have to deal with what happened in the past, and it's good to know what happened so maybe you won't do it again.